So back to our victim. This is a 2007 Lincoln MKX, also the same as the Ford Edge, just a trim package essentially. There's really almost no difference. This is the 3.5 V6, not the EcoBoost, but the Duratech, I believe they called it. They used it in the Edge, the MKX, the Flex, probably a handful of others. And pretty good engine overall. I mean, it's but this engine is notorious for having a timing chain driven water pump that's actually buried up under the front cover with the timing chain, and if it fails or seal goes out on that or bearing, and you typically see a water pump fail, you know, externally on an engine, it's got a weep hole at the bottom. Well, that weep hole is directly into the oil pan back behind the front cover, and if you aren't watching it, you'll have oil full of coolant, which will destroy an engine in short order. So, big reason to do that on this. What's the number one cause of failure in any cooling system? And it's the coolant turning acidic. If we think about a battery, it's an anode and a cathode, which are just two dissimilar metals, one more noble than the other. And here we have a mix of metals. It was even worse back in the old days with brass, which is largely copper, but brass radiators and iron blocks. Well, now we have, I don't know if this thing's all aluminum, at least aluminum head, very likely a cast iron block. It's the same reason that exhaust manifold studs rust so terribly and actually crumble and fail, because of the dissimilarity there. So when you add heat, that increases the reaction, but more than anything, acidity. What's a battery need? An anode and a cathode and an acid solution. That's why battery acid is so caustic. It is an acid. So you have pH buffers in antifreeze to try to keep that pH as close to neutral as possible, but over time those break down, and that is the number one cause. The antifreeze itself, the liquid, becomes slightly acidic. And you can have the same thing with a base, although it's much more accelerated with an acid. But even just a slight bit of acidity will speed this process up unbelievably. What's a battery need? An anode and a cathode and an acid solution. You have pH buffers in antifreeze to try to keep that pH as close to neutral as possible, but over time those break down, and that is the number one cause. The antifreeze itself, the liquid, becomes slightly acidic. GM, Ford, Toyota, Honda, they're almost all this way. So changing the coolant, you know, they advertise new cars 100,000 mile coolant. Maybe 50 or 60 is a better bet. Another big thing is, look how yellowed and cloudy the overflow tank is. You cannot see in there. If this thing starts using coolant, it'll be easy to not notice because you can't hardly tell. So I'm going to replace the tank as well with an aftermarket that's a clear plastic like this was originally. I'm sure just age and heat and maybe even a little contamination in the coolant has caused that discoloring. So draining it, there is a drain, pretty typical on almost all radiators, way down at the bottom, driver's side, way down at the bottom. I have to get a light down there. So crawling up under the driver's side here, right in front of this little front cross member, right behind the bumper, we see that yellowed, it was white, but now it's yellowed from age. That's the plug. And the drain hole does drip down through that bottom plastic on the radiator, and it's going to hit down here, and that's probably not going to focus, and it's going to spread out all over, so you probably want a drain pan of some sort, not just a bucket to catch that excess. But you'll want a short bucket, you know, 2.5 gallons, something like that. And you'll just loosen it. You don't have to back it all the way out. The more you loosen it, the faster it'll drain, but you don't have to get in a big hurry. You can let it drain slowly. If you do unthread it all the way, it'll come out with quite a bit of force at first and tend to shoot out past your pan or your catch bucket. You know, expect close to a couple gallons out of a radiator this size. So the plug looks something similar to this, and all you'll see sticking out is the head, and it could have something to get a hold of there like a wing nut, or it could have a hex head, or it could have an Allen head reset in the center. I think this one's got the hex head on the outside like a bolt and an Allen slot or hole in the center. The rest of this then sticks up into the radiator itself. And if we look at the threads here, we can see it's righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Not too much different than any other drain plug. You thread it out, that O-ring there seals. The catches there at the end keep it caged so it can't come all the way out. But you loosen it and then it allows the coolant to flow past it, so you need a small bucket to catch it. And most of the time you don't need to replace it unless it's really old and crumbly or you break it on the way out, especially out here. But I did have this on hand. At one point we had 4 Ford products in the driveway, all used the same plug, and I thought, well, it may not be bad to have one on hand, because sure enough, if I need one, local parts store will be out and I'll be all day chasing around for one. So I've had this one in the glove box of the oldest pickup for a few years now. And top overflow hose comes out of the thermostat housing. So getting it off of there, probably best to attack the hoses first. You'll need a pair of pliers. Is the easiest way to get these clamps apart. Right down here at the bottom of the reservoir, and that is the intake out of the reservoir down into the radiator. So it's a larger hose, not all that huge, but a good inch diameter. So same thing on that clamp, and then same thing wiggling that off, and then we can come up here and get the 3 bolts. One here that holds it and the washer fluid reservoir together, and then one on either side up against the firewall holding the tank. And I can never find my favorite pair when I'm willing to do something, so I end up using a lesser, smaller pair. Tough thing is getting in here sometimes you get hold of both tabs and having enough room left for the body of the pliers. They do make a special type of plier just for these clamps, and unfortunately for me, I do not have them. I just don't deal with them often enough, and there are a couple different sizes, so you need to have a full set, probably 2 or 3 of them. Now, since we don't care a whole lot about the old reservoir itself, I'm not too worried about breaking the nipple, but I don't want to have a chunk broken off in the hose because I'm not replacing the hose, although it may not be a bad idea depending on how old and how many miles. These body panel clip remover tools can work pretty well on these smaller hoses, spread a little bit. Not too bad on plastic, but a lot of times when they're on metal, the hose tends to adhere to the metal, and getting that broke loose, variations of twisting, prying just a little bit. The end goal is to not damage the hose as you do it. It's going to be more difficult because I have such a limited hand angle. It may almost be better to unbolt it and be able to pull it up out of the way. So, 8mm or 5/16. Does that gain us much? It does not gain us a whole lot. We're still right next to an air conditioner line. I'm trying to pry this thing. Usually if you just get them started, just get that initial bond broken a little bit, then they'll come on off. And again, the end goal is to preserve the hose, not tear it up. Okay. There we go. So, the sanity check makes sure the replacement looks like there's some buildup in there. I don't know if they added some stop leak at some point, and that's probably not going to show up, or I can't get the right angle, but it's pretty cruddy. Or, gosh, unchanged coolant for 100,000 miles, and the additive started to settle out into the tank and adhered. But you can see here the clouding, right? You go to check the coolant level and you can't tell this thing's completely empty. I can't tell, is the coolant here or is it there? So if this thing does go to lose coolant internally, you can't just spot check it here and say, hey, I'm low on coolant, right, with that cloudy reservoir. It's good news for the home team. The replacement does look the same to me. So in addition, on the very back up against the firewall, it does have a lower clip that clips on to the firewall in a notch. That's not all I don't know. The metal insert in the nipple here runs all the way up here, and that's because the plastic's not strong enough. That clamp over time would just collapse the plastic and crack it. So that's there for strength. It's there in the aftermarket. But there's our hose stop mark. So you want the hose to seat all the way up against Those nubs are plastic, if you can see them there. And then just slide the clamp up about midway, right? There's the lower part of the nipple. Clamp needs to be up above that, but somewhere below the top. So somewhere right in here would be a good spot for it. When you squeeze it too tight together, it ends up catching there on that tab, and you've got to be able to hold this steady and push down with considerable pressure to get that clip to come undone, unclasped from that. So I've got to get it on the hose first. Sometimes the challenge is having enough jaw travel on pliers while still being able to get them on there for grip. Where are my good pliers and not these sorry things either? Craftsman. Old CTs that I have somewhere. I guess manufacturers like these clamps because they're auto-tensioning. You know, in other words, you can't really over-tighten them. They stay put. On the assembly until you get it in place. But if you don't have the proper release tool, they're a real bastard. Can be. Wouldn't have been so bad if I hadn't caught it all the way. I should have just gone for a gear clamp because there I've popped it on the catch again. Another method is this slot's big enough if I can even get it from here. You take that pop and pry. Simply not enough room to keep a larger screwdriver in there. Harbor Freight to the rescue. I've wasted more time now on this one darn clamp. You know, they're handy when I put radiator hoses on that F250. It was kind of nice because they're a tough reach. They were large enough that you can get a screwdriver in there to release them. This isn't worth a darn on this smaller setup, so gear clamp it is for me. I know there's the advantage of those are a preset tension. You can't over tighten them, you can't under tighten them. I guess they can fatigue in time, but yeah, what a horrible pain in the ass. I understand why everybody bitches about them so much. Alright, so way too long later, we've got our traditional worm drive, worm gear clamp on there. 3 bolts back in, new reservoir on. This hose is easy by comparison. You could almost do that by hand if not such a sharp end. Of course, not with the left hand. Right on there. We can try to line up with the mark on the hose, or not. I'm going to need both hands for that. Alright, so we're ready to put coolant in it. Clean funnel. I bought pre-mixed. Check the manual for the specs. I mean, there are about 1 million different brands of Universal, but make sure it at least is labeled to meet the specs. If it calls for ethylene glycol, don't put propylene glycol in it. There are some special additives. Really gets more complicated on diesel engines, and a lot of the really new direct injection engines are a lot harder on coolant, much more similar to diesels. Other than that, there's not a whole lot of difference. Everybody's using about the same mix of metals, but make sure it meets the specs for your year, model, manufacturer. So get a clean funnel. Realistically, if there's a tiny amount of oil residue in there, it's probably not going to be a deal breaker, but you don't want a bunch of shit in there. So I looked, and we got about 5 quarts that I captured out of this one. Now I probably spilled a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and fill right up to the seam of this tank. So air, hopefully you can have air pockets down in the head, sure, but ought to seek a high point, which is right up under here on our return line coming out of the engine. And there's the thermostat housing sticking off the side. It's a goofy looking setup. What you can do by hand is grab a hold of the radiator upper hose, that's your return hose, and you can see over here in the reservoir, you can see bubbles coming up. If that'll work some of the bubbles out here. Shouldn't have any bubbles in the lower line. And we've already dropped the coolant level, good ½ inch in the tank. So I've got the heater right open while I do this. In case we have any air in we'll flush out through the heater core as well. And I'm actually going to set you up here and we can watch the reservoir. If that'll show up, I can't tell. The sunlight's so bright on the screen on this camera. Alright, so I've started it back up and being real careful not to put my hands on anything that might move and cut my fingers off. I can reach back there on the thermostat housing and feel it's getting nice and warm. And I can come in here and I can feel the heater feels pretty warm. I still don't see a whole lot of movement out of the gauge yet. So watching the temperature gauge, throw a little RPM variation at it. Right, that'll really speed up water flow through the pump. Now we're seeing the gauge start to move a little bit. So we're just off a cold, and that'll tell me that the thermostat is, at least the electronic, is detecting the heat. And yeah, that's getting pretty warm out of the heater. So shut it off, give it another couple minutes to heat soak, and I think we'll be ready to take it for a test drive. And of course, before we do that, we'll tighten the cap back down, let it build pressure. Once that thermostat fully opens, we don't want it blowing out. There we go. There should be a click style on those. So the aftermarket fill jug does not have any kind of markings for cold fill range, but I did find on the original, right in that area was cold fill range. So right about there, if that'll show up, finger width below the seam for cold fill, and then when it's hot, ends up right at the seam. So that'll be easy to spot if you pull in for gas and pop the hood. If it's up around that seam, then we don't have any coolant loss. And if it's cold, finger width below, that's easy enough to spot. And if it develops a leak, now we can actually see it versus that old clouded tank. So anyway, thanks again for watching.